Hello and welcome to the weekly JupyterLab call for November 2nd. Today we have 18 people on the call and hopefully more will join. If you haven't already, please sign in to the agenda, which is linked in the chat, just in case I'll link it one more time. And if there's anything you'd like to discuss, please add it to the agenda as a bullet point. And if it's a bit longer than just a few minutes, then maybe put it in the additional discussion section at the bottom. Today, at the top of the agenda, we have some items from Jeremy, who is unable to join. Is there anyone who would like to go through these? I can read them, but other voices are nice to hear. Oh, this is a low ball. Come on.
I can go ahead if you want.
Yeah, go for
it. So Jeremy is proposing to add deprecation notice if people are using the command line interface of adding or installing uninstalling a lab extension. The idea behind it is that since JupyterLab 3, we are now using and advertising people to use pre-built extensions. So the idea is to bring that deprecation warning as soon as possible so that people can prepare for it, although we'll keep that features up to JupyterLab 5. So it will be still around for some time, but at least people get notified early. So yeah, that's the main question of Jeremy.
I thought we talked about this like back in spring and decided we were going to do this. And I guess in the back of my mind, I thought somebody had just picked it up and done it already. For those else that remember, did we not make a decision, or did we just defer it and forget about it? Or because I could have sworn we had decided to do exactly this, like literally like 6 months ago.
Sounds like we could search the meeting notes, huh?
The issue that he is referring to, like the oldest one, is from October last year. So that makes sense that if somebody is recalling some discussion about it.
Yeah, I know I'm in favor of the deprecation notification.
Yeah, I am too. So I guess a good thing to do is we should maybe record in the notes. Are there any objections to this? Cool.
Just to check, is it only the managing or the even like having non-pre-built extensions?
So
oh, sorry. I was going to say, if I remember correctly, we still will support them. There just won't be part of like the manager. It's like a soft retirement. Like they still work. They just they won't be fully supported like through the manager. Like you can't just what was the term that they used in the like lab extension install? You couldn't do that way, but you could like still pip install them, or not pip npm install them. Because I raised the same question when we discussed it previously.
Well, we never used npm install to install lab extensions, right?
Yeah, you could. Most people don't because.
Well, I guess it would be npm pack, but is it you put them in the folder? Is that it?
Yeah, you could install using npm. Like you didn't have to install using pip.
So if you have an extension that you don't want to turn into a pip package, you will retain the ability to npm packet, turn it into a tarball, and put the tarball into the place on disk where your other extensions reside. Is that what you're saying, Alex?
Yes.
Okay.
And there was no package JSON file that needed modification or anything to pick those up. As long as it's in the folder, they will be backed up automatically, right?
Correct. That's how Elira actually used to install all of our extensions a year ago. We didn't actually use any of the command line tools. We packed everything up individually and manually put it in the correct place.
Yeah, then for sure I do not have any objections to deprecating the ease of use APIs.
Okay, Vidar, next step is to deprecate that, but that'll be for another version.
Yeah, another possibility is the lab extension installs a pre-built extension. Just, oh, hey, we have a visitor who's enamored with seeing herself on the camera. We could have JupyterLab extension install a pre-built extension just by downloading the correct files from, say, a CDN somewhere and putting them on disk. So there's other possibilities for a lab extension install command that lets you install extensions that aren't necessarily Python pip packages, API packages.
So your pitch is so we deprecate it right now, and once we get rid of it, we actually replace it with a new, essentially pip install over.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I recommend. I'm saying it's another possibility for installing extensions that that are language agnostic, essentially. The files live somewhere out there, and this command just literally takes those files and puts them in the right directory.
Yeah, the clear advantage there as well would be that currently it takes an npm package, right?
Yeah.
So and a version. And it has all this logic for checking whether it's compatible with the JupyterLab version and updating it as everything. So if we had a standard way of distributing pre-built lab extensions over npm registry, then we could have those CLI APIs just work as they do. But instead of saying like, oh, I'm taking the source and I'm including this in the build and whatever, it's just saying like, oh, I'm going to go there, see if it supports this pre-built stuff, and if it does, just pull it in.
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe we don't want to make this exact CLI that sort of method of installing, because it would break people that are jumping from 3 to 6 or whatever. Maybe we do make it a separate CLI command, but I'm just saying there's another avenue for package installation that we've long contemplated, and that is not as Python packages, but just as pull the files from somewhere and put them in the desk in the right place. But as a precursor to that, +1 to deprecating the source packages, I don't think we've seen any pushback from the community about needing source packages instead of pre-built packages. So hooray, success, yay.
I think the last thing we said there was that it would be good if we actually got some numbers on whether pre-built packages end up loading a lot less, or roughly the same amount of data in the browser versus a compiled one. Because the compiled one has the potential, at least, to do tree shaking, right? And it does deduplication and all of that stuff. So that's
maybe we can take a quick straw poll of anybody here. Is anybody using source extensions at all or substantially?
Yes.
Okay.
But that was, but wait a minute. This comes up. This is a longer discussion. I'd be happy to turn the extension that I used and I wrote into a pre-built extension if I could get it to work. So that's the issue. I mean, which is that it's and I've put this on for additional discussion at the end, because I'm sure most people know how to do this and think it's a boring, stupid newbie request. And I apologize, but seriously, a guide to publishing extension in a registry, packaging an extension, and pre-building extension will be terrific, and better debugging information on why this thing would also be great. My usual request.
I think, Rick, offhand, if I were in your position where I had a working extension that was building and able to be installed one way and I wanted to switch to the other way, I would use the cookie cutter, make a brand new blank extension, then copy and paste my code in instead of trying to figure it out, because that would seem like the lowest hanging fruit. But let's wait until we get to your actual use case and talk about it more fully.
Yes, thank you, AT, and I'm happy to do whatever the community recommends. And I'm also happy to write up the experience for future extension authors, because I may be exceptionally slow, but I'll bet you there are people who are even slower than I am. You might have to look hard to find them.
So as far as Jeremy's question goes, though, it seems like we don't have objections, right?
Yes, it's for the suggestion of deprecating it now and then dropping it in version 5. Even if we do bring something else back, as Jason suggested, as another variant to do something, I think this can still go in for now, especially as saying that source extensions, utility things will go away.
Okay, cool. Can someone please make a note either in the HackMD or on the PR saying something to that effect, so that whenever Jeremy gets back to this, he's not blocked on it. And why don't we continue? Fred, you are up next.
I propose to move to other people and then come back to me, as it's
Well
gonna be
done.
long.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Then Gabriel, you are up.
Hello, hello. This is just your friendly reminder that the Jupyter accessibility meeting is after this one. It is 15 minutes after the hour following this meeting, and I am doing this announcement on behalf of Isabella. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. Andrew, you are up.
Hey everyone, my name is Andrew. I'm working in AWS, and this week I'm on call. So because of that, the first item that I'd like to ask help with is related to that. So there is a bug that Fernando have identified that or as far as I know, no one else was able to reproduce yet, but that potentially is a big problem. It's like a markdown line bug, and this line is not shown, and anything that is like in the same cell is not shown. So if there are 20 people present here on the call, I wanted to maybe share my screen and show how the bug could be reproduced. And if you guys could try reproducing it, it would help. And if no one can reproduce it, I would love to get any advice from the community on how to, like, you know, proceed in this in this situation, because the bug is potentially critical, but we can't reproduce it so far. So yeah, I would love to take any advice on that. I will share my screen now. So let me see. Let me share the whole screen. So the idea is that you open any cell, you change the type of the cell to the markdown, you type 3 dashes, which is a line, and any text below it, and the text should the text should not be like should not appear. But on my end, it does appear. So
I think it needs to be in a new line, right?
yep, absolutely. Yeah, it has to be a new line. So but I can't reproduce it on my end, so line just is getting rendered. So if you guys could take a minute, try doing that on your end. And report back, that would be very helpful.
So just to double check, have you managed under any circumstance to see this bug or no?
No, that's the problem.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I also was unable to produce it, but and I tried multiple versions of lab just in case surrounding the one that Fernando was using. He was using 3.5.0. I tried in 3.4.7 and 3.5.0, and I tried just the default branch just to see if this is like an ongoing thing. I couldn't get it to break in any of those. So yeah, if anyone, there's 20 people on the call now. If anyone manages to produce this, please make note of your environment and please write a comment in the PR.
It would be good for to ask Fernando whether he has any lab extensions that are non-vanilla installed that could potentially.
Yeah, that's right. We probably should have asked him about his extensions. We tried to blame his browser extension setup, but it turns out that he tried it in all his browsers and managed to produce the bug, which was wild. So it does probably indicate, yeah, maybe one of his actual JupyterLab extensions is doing it.
Is there potentially one could ask, are there any other commands to get like the environments, the list of currently installed extensions with one command? I know there is JupyterLab extension list, Jupyter server extension list, there is Jupyter version, and so on. That's probably the best approach, right? To get the environment.
Yeah, I would ask for all three of those outputs. I don't think there's a single command.
Okay, cool.
Also, to be fair, when Fernando created this issue, there should have been an issue template where the commands to list all those things were. So he would have been deleting them before typing in this issue.
Also, he was seeing them. Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I think this part of the question is done. Thank you very much for the advice. It is very helpful. The other thing I wanted to ask help with.
I have one quick comment on this. I did a quick search on for the horizontal line, the words horizontal line in JupyterLab issues, to see if we've ever encountered anything like this before. And at least one pointed to the virtual notebook rendering. So I'm curious what settings he has for the notebook, and in particular, does he have virtual notebook cells on, or there may be other settings. And I think, did he ever give us the JupyterLab version that he was dealing with? There have been bugs that look like this, as in cells kind of disappearing into a horizontal line.
Oh, sorry.
That were old versions of 3.1 something or other.
Yeah, he's using 3.5.0 and
that's right. Okay. Yeah, so another place to look is his notebook settings and making sure that whoever's reproducing has the same notebook settings, in particular the virtual rendering or something like that. And it would be helpful if he just recorded a short video. If he could reproduce it with a clean notebook, with a single cell, etc. I mean, that's what we're trying to reproduce. Or if there's like a number of things that he's doing before this happens, it would be helpful if he just had a short video so we could see exactly what steps he's doing.
Thank you, Jason. Could you send me a link to this issue if it is opened for you? If it's not, it's fine. The one you were talking about, the similar one. So yeah, thank you. So if no one has any inputs in terms of that, I wanted to ask about advice on the other thing. So the other thing is I'm trying to implement something using notebook drag and drop capabilities in JupyterLab, and I'm seeking good but not too complex of an example of an extension or of JupyterLab like core package that uses notebook drag and drop capabilities in not too of a complicated way. If anyone has any advice on this, please let me know. Notebook drag and drop.
I might be able to help because recently I bumped into a bug in Luminol where there are several packages in JupyterLab which reuse Lumino data drag and drop functionality. So, and these are not only in the notebook, but also the file browser uses that. So maybe the file browser has more self-contained example. So there is an issue which I filed that it actually turns out to be very degrading performance on Chromium browsers. So maybe we could actually look into re-implementing drag and drop using native browser mechanisms rather than using the Lumino stuff, which is not wrong in itself. It's bugs in Chromium browser which are contributing to the slowdown.
Just for context, has there been any improvements on the browser native drag and drop? Do we think we can replace the Lumino one?
So there are limitations of the native support. You can do a lot of things with the native draggable attributes. You can listen to the on drop, drag started and drag motion, but during the motion, you cannot render elements. The browser takes control of that. So you can only replace the ghost image with another image rather than the one generated by the browser, but you wouldn't have the full control like in Lumino when you are moving a tab to another dock area, you get this blue outline, which is nicely showing where the tab will land. We cannot get that easily. But for file browser, when you are just moving a node with the file name and an icon, you can get the same behavior from the native browser support.
Right, because if you're dragging something from the file browser out, it will try to open it as a window, so it will show those blue areas, right?
I think that's correct. We would have a trouble tracking that, but maybe it's possible to do some workaround, listen to other events.
Okay, good. Thank you for the discussion. I will take a look at the file browser, for example. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. I have a quick one. So if you are a member of the JupyterLab Council or any other sub-project council, or a member of a standing committee or working group that has a named council in Jupyter, then you probably already got an email from Fernando talking about the Jupyter Executive Council election and nominations for it. I just wanted to describe a little bit what that is and encourage you to apply if you've been holding back. So the new governance structure of Jupyter, as I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing by this point, but some of you may not have heard, is broken up into multiple groups that are to reflect the separation of concerns that exists in the projects. So there are named sub-projects like JupyterLab or Jupyter Hub or Jupyter Notebook. There are standing committees. There are some working groups, and each of these has their own group of people who work on them regularly. So those people are have always unofficially been the decision makers of those projects, and now there's just a bit of official veneer on top of it to make it clear to someone who may not be familiar with the project how did decisions get made. And for people who can't come to every single call, it's clear who's going to vote on things. And every person who is involved in one of these projects and is in one of these voting bodies is eligible to run for the Jupyter Executive Council, which is the group of people that the standing committees and working groups are managed by and is the group of people who are in charge of things like fundraising or putting on events or handling code of conduct violations or lots of project-wide things that are not strictly software or technical decision making. And that body is to have 6 people in it. There are currently 3 of us who are bootstrapping this because we were named in the pull request that went into the governance repo that described this new structure. I'm one of them. That's why I'm saying us. And 3 people are meant to be elected. And for the very first election, the people who are elected will have 1-year terms. After that, everyone will have 2-year terms so that each year half of the council is up for election. And so the commitment that we're asking people who are elected to this office make is fairly modest. It's 2 to 4 hours a week, and it's for 1 year. And the nomination form is fairly terse as well. It's mostly questions that you can answer with your mouse, i.e., clicking on checkboxes or drop downs or multiple choice. There's one question that is free form, but it's limited to 300 words. It's not supposed to be a huge undertaking to nominate yourself. So if you are one of the people who is eligible to run for this and you're interested and you've been holding back, please stop. Please feel free to nominate yourself. If you want a little bit of help or you want some questions that have not been answered in what I just said or in the emails, please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help you with it. And if there's anything I can answer now, any questions that have come up in your mind, I'm happy to. Okay. The next person on the agenda is Jason Grau.
I noticed in the notes there's no mention of JupyterCon. So if you haven't heard already, JupyterCon 2023 is on. There's a website, it's a preliminary website you can see in the notes, jupytercon.com, or jupyter.org has a banner for JupyterCon as well. So it's in Paris, May 10th through 12th next year. I really hope to see everyone there. It would be really fun to get together. And it should be a great time to share and participate and learn from the entire community. The second, just to follow up from last week, I created the repo that we talked about last week. Invite anybody that wants to contribute or even just have better suggestions for the plugin name or the MIME type. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Okay. Fred, is this a good time to come back to you?
It seems so. Thanks, Erin. So I was wanting to review the feature list for 3.6.0 because the main point was to do RTC, to bring RTC improvement on that branch. We have done most of the work, and so we would like to start moving out of alpha. So there has been already 2 alphas released. So as alpha stands, they are not features complete, but they were for testing purpose of the RTC features mainly. I hope it's big enough. Let me know if it's too small. So this is the release feature list for 3.6.0. So as I said, there is a bunch of things about RTC. The main changes is that we are moving to use the Jupyter white doc package. So the source of truth when you are doing real-time collaboration, it's in the backend. And so every client that is connecting for doing collaboration is opening a WebSocket to receive the deltas of the other user through that server pieces. So that's one, that's the main change. And the other one, incidentally, is that we should allow empty notebook. So empty notebook are may happen only if, so in 3.6, only if the user is in collaboration mode, and only if one or multiple user decided that all cells should be deleted. So it can be, if it's the same user that is deleting all cells, then there will be an additional cell that will be added. But the empty notebook can happen if like there is 2 cells and the 2 users delete the separate cells, and then that will be an empty notebook. And so the user will see a small note instead of just having a blank page to say, okay, the notebook is empty, please add a cell. But it should be a rare case, as also creating a new notebook will be, the new notebook will be with an empty cell as it used to be. So that's the main changes. There's been another changes, and it's related to Jupyter Server 2. To do collaboration, we need better support for identity, and this is provided by the coming Jupyter Server v2. And so there has been an extension of the service package to cover that new API part of Jupyter Server. So this is just to be compatible with Jupyter Server v2, but so that's the question I have for later about which version of Jupyter Server do we want to support for 3.6.0. And finally, there has been teeny changes related to the usage of file ID service. So for people that are not aware of, it has been a work funded and done by AWS and mainly David, but I don't think he's on the call. The main trouble when you are doing collaboration is if a file you are working on is renamed, and we need to be able to catch that, and file ID service is the way around it. So basically, the server is tracking a file by a unique ID, and this ID is independent of the file when the session is live, let's say. So that's, but it doesn't impact the API in JupyterLab itself. It's just there were some teeny changes needed for that. So there is no breakage of the API for that specific thing. Oh no, I'm wrong. There is one. We have dropped the rename features of the doc provider. But okay, all that work is done. We have one issue that I may have inserted Monday evening. So there's one thing that I need to look at. But so far, the latest alpha, so the alpha 1 that has been released, apparently is quite stable. And so that work is mainly done. And there has been other PR listed here. So the notification queue and display of toast notification. So I've implemented it in master. The idea is to backport it to 3.6.0 and to add on top of that an announcement features that I will just present a bit in detail afterwards with a demo. There is this PR that Mike has opened, I think, already 2 weeks ago, yeah, October 11, that I think we should move forward with. I have released also a new version of Lumino, so this one about a performance issue could make it too easily. There's been other small thing like Mike also has take the chance of reviewing some styles to use more icons in the settings to make the plugin stands out a bit more than just having so many with a cog. There's been small things about style for the border. There's been some work done by Nicola from Quantstack for improving a bit some behavior when you are doing single document opening. So basically the idea is to not load all documents. So if the state of your application has multiple documents and you open the application in a single document mode, it will load that document and it will delay opening others to the time you switch back to having a multi-document view. So there's been this deprecation that we have spoken about. There is one new contributors that want to add some options for the sanitizer. I think it's gonna be able to make it for 3.6. And I think this one is also by Mike about improvement for the performances and the CSS style. So this is the list. If you are thinking about something that's missing and you want it into 3.6, I would like people to add it like before the end of this week, because ideally I would like to start doing features frozen, so betas next week, because otherwise it's gonna be difficult to release 3.6 before end of the year. So that means that it's gonna be difficult to have 4 after that, before the end of the year. So the idea is really that 3.6 should be the last major version on the 3x branches. And so coming back on my point, so there's 3 questions to that. So the first one is, should we pin Jupyter Server 2 with 3.6.0? The pro is that for collaboration, we need the identity API. So that would be nice if we enforce that. But as it's the collaboration in 3D, it's behind the flag. The other possibility would be to implement a runtime dependency check and say, okay, if you want to use JupyterLab with collaboration, probably you should use those versions, and we should stop for that specific case, but still keeping the compatibility with Jupyter Server 1. Probably, as Jason is writing, yeah, the idea would be to keep compatibility with V1. The advantage of that is that people will be able to update to patch release also with bug fixes and stuff like that without fear. So I think we're probably gonna go the second path, but I would like for people to give some feedback, and then I'll go back to the other 2 points.
My favorite part of that was we've released an alpha and it's apparently stable.
Yay! Vidar does have a good point here, that it may not need to be a requirement, but perhaps we could say there's a warning in 3.6 if you have an old version of Jupyter Server that renaming doesn't work, but other things should work the same as before. In other words, your experience isn't degraded from before. Is that possible?
I want maybe a bit fast, sorry for that. So definitely for the file ID thing, it's true that we can just make a warning. The trouble is more with the Jupyter Server version, that if you don't have identity provider, then it's gonna be weird for the user if he's using collaboration.
When
But maybe I can just make that check, like just Jupyter's. I mean, I can produce warning for the other packages, but break if or stop the execution for Jupyter Server itself. That's totally fine for me. It's just a matter of deciding. Mike?
How would that potentially affect Jupyter Hub and Binder? Because I know that previously when RTC was released for the first time, there was some questions on whether it's compatible, and pinning as Jupyter Server might potentially cause some issues. Was that tested?
It's not compatible. The trouble of Binder is that it's assuming that notebook is executed. So actually, if you want to use Jupyter Server 2, you cannot use Binder easily. Let me go back to JupyterLab. I had to modify our Binder settings. So basically, we need to trick the start of Jupyter Notebook to say we don't start Jupyter Notebook, but we start JupyterLab. Because yeah, Jupyter Binder doesn't work with Jupyter Server v2.
Could we make this work upstream before 3.6 release?
I have opened an issue on Jupyter Server, but yeah, definitely I think the call is tomorrow, and I should join and raise the question. Yeah, I have no idea how tough it is. Like, as far as I have tried, it seems that there is some clashes of the cookies, because like the cookies that is set by Jupyter Notebook is made invalid when the server is trying to use it, and so it's revoking it. And so you get like an infinite loop of going back to the logging page that is on Notebook and then redirection to the server. And so that's what's happening for now. If you just try to say, I want no token and no password. So yeah, but as I was not at all involved in the identity features, I don't know the detail, but probably having a discussion with Zach and the others would be more interesting on that front.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. You have other issues, right?
Yeah. Then the other thing is, so for now we have the shared models inside JupyterLab core. The trouble is that now we have two places where we define the schema of a document. So we have the TypeScript version that are in shared model, but we have also a Python version that's in the backend in Jupyter YDoc. And what I would like to propose is to extract those shared model to be at the same place than the Python description of the schema, so that we can more easily maintain the consistency between the two schemas. The other idea also behind it is it will be easier for third party to connect their tools with our way of representing a collaborative notebook. So the idea would be only to move code, but that's mean changing organization because the YDoc is in Jupyter Server.
This is just about creating a monorepo between the two projects.
Yep.
I think basically this is a two-step. So does anyone in JupyterLab object to this? And then tomorrow you can ask the same thing in Server, presumably.
Yeah, true that I should ask on that front, on that side too. Oh yeah, and as David Brochard is mentioning in the chat, we could also discuss maybe to move that project then to the Jupyter organization, but yeah.
I don't, in theory, think that's a bad idea, but in practice, the Jupyter org just has a lot of things that are difficult to organize in it. So the fact that it's in Server now kind of makes it easier to figure out. And I would suggest leaving that there. But as far as moving shared models to Server, I think that's not unreasonable. And I imagine, well, I'll ask again, does anyone have an objection to this? Cool. Then let's just bring it up at the server call tomorrow and see what people say there.
I will mention one other thing. Do we expect this to become a standard on the level of Jupyter Notebook format and Jupyter kernel messaging protocol?
Yes, I think the hope is that it will, but currently the reference implementation is the spec. There isn't a formally defined one. And I think we're past the POC stage, but we're pre the standardization stage, but I think it ought to be, yeah.
So eventually there is a new subproject the Jupyter standards subproject, which nominally maintains the repos, Jupyter client in B format, these repos that sort of are encoding our standards. And so maybe eventually it makes it into the Jupyter standards project as sort of a lower level standard. But yeah, if it's not to that point yet, then carry on.
Yeah, I would say it's not yet at that point. Okay, thanks. So then I ask on the Jupyter server side tomorrow. And then finally, just have a couple of minutes, sorry, it's long, but just a demo. So I hope you can all see my screen. So some weeks back, I have implemented the ability of doing notification. So basically you get a queue in which you stack notification, and there is a plugin that's listening to that queue, and you can either display directly with Toast the notification, or having them display in a kind of center, a notification center. And so what I have implemented is an enhancement features. So here it is. When JupyterLab is launched, so by default, it will fetch an RSS feed. And for all posts, it will create a notification. And it will need probably to tune if it's on all posts or whatever, but that's the idea. And the idea is to use that to be able to connect more easily with our community, like to mention that there is a big new version that's coming. Like if we want to do another survey, as we did like 2 or 3 years back now, and to be nice to use that features too, because it's one of the trouble we always have. We have plenty of communication channels, but probably the best is in the application directly. And yes, as Jason is written on the note that I'm seeing in parallel, is what's missing is that I want to add a button that say, yeah, don't show me that again. That's the thing that I want to show. And there is another thing that's not displayed here, is that is checking for updates too. So there is an additional post that will appear if there is a new version that's available on PyPy. And the idea is that all of those are customizable. So that means that administrator can set up server settings to turn both features off, and user can decide that I don't want to be buffered by that any longer. And so to just give an idea, so this is the notification center in case you have missed the PR about it. I've seen that there is some styling issue about the icon over there.
So-
Vidar has his hand up. What do you?
Yeah, so do you understand it? Is this making a network request on start by default?
Yeah.
I would say that that's probably something that should be put behind an opt-in.
Yeah, as I said, everything is opt-in. You
It's
can
opt-in and not opt-out?
Yeah, it depends, because it's opt-in for the administrators to set, and then the user won't be able to change that, or the user will be able to say, I don't want that, and then it will be a settings, and it will be able to turn it on back. So there will be 2 levels.
Right, so if somebody just pip installs this and doesn't change any settings, they will not see this. It will not be doing any network requests.
By default in 3.6, it will.
Right, that's the word I'm saying. That should be opt-in. It shouldn't be by default doing something network requests, which can then be used to say, oh, we know where all our users are, so we have collected all of their IP addresses, right? At some point, if we do that, we need a privacy policy.
I'm not sure, because you are just asking for a RSS feed. So there is no way we can store any information.
Yeah, we
Right,
need
but the remote server can store information.
It
Yeah,
can.
It's
We would need
GitHub.
we would need that policy if we were actually recording that stuff. But regardless,
Well,
though,
if it's hitting
opting in
GitHub,
is
then we
good.
need to display the GitHub privacy policy, right?
Sure, but we could decide to host it on Jupyter.org or something that we know isn't collecting it. But the point of opting in is good even if it had zero privacy implications, because you might want everything inside your Jupyter instance to be air gapped and not connected to the internet and all that. So I think opt-in in general is a good idea.
Yeah,
Frederick, what if the announcement plugin as a very first notification popped up and said, would you like to, receive news and things like this? And that's something that's hard coded in there, and it's done, to set the setting, and it's an opt-in.
Yeah, then I go that path. Thanks.
Okay, so we only have 5
Yeah.
minutes. I really don't want to.
I just wanted to add one last feedback that that question should probably then be a notification, as he said, and not a dialogue, right? Because everybody who ever starts up a JupyterLite or a binder will see this question every time, right? Because it's a fresh instance without any instance. So it should be a discrete question that can be easily dismissed.
Yeah. Okay. Just in the interest of at least getting to hear Rick out, even though we don't have enough time for discussion. Sorry, Rick, but you are up.
Okay, very briefly. So here's the extension, and what it does. I'll click it over. Probably should have opened it ahead of time. What it does is it loads an external dashboard editor, which we wrote. And as you can see, as it opens this up, it follows the editor protocol and opens up a gd.json file in the file browser, and as you update it, it continuously updates that. Here's a more fully formed one. Now, so that's the extension. It's a couple of things. It's pure TypeScript, front end only. There's no back end or Python stuff here. It's as you can see, it does menus. It also puts an icon on the launcher, and it's generally designed actually that the only thing that you have to do to add any other external editor to this thing is provide a new icon and provide a URL to provide a new icon, provide a file type, a file extension, and 3, provide a new web page where the actual editor lives. Now, I've been running. First of all, it's completely open source. I'm entirely happy to publish it to the world. I just need I just need guidance on exactly how to do that, and how we want to be good members of the community, and I want to be and I just want to follow best practices here. That's one. 2, I've had the thing compiling it for a year. I haven't been able to do a pre-built extension, install it. I have to build the thing in and install it from source every time. But as of just yesterday, it suddenly stopped working, and the error message I got back was on the build. Well, build's fine, and then when I try to run it, it says the metadata wasn't found in the registry. So clearly, our publishing our publishing and packaging of this extension is poor. I would like to do it properly, and I would also like, assuming that I'm not uniquely cursed, to write up how to do it so that other people don't run into the same problems I have. And I'd like help. Just like guidance and oh gee, here's what you're doing wrong. And I do promise to give back by writing it up. That's it.
Cool. So I think in this particular case, if there's anyone on the call who's recently done this, perhaps someone could volunteer to look at it with you. In the general case, for people who are starting from scratch, the cookie cutters have improved. Now they ship with a release.md file that shows like how to release the newly created package that you've made. But that doesn't help you in your current circumstance because you've already built this thing. It's already working. Now it stops. So that's sort of like it would be kind of a waste of time to start rebuilding the wheel here. There's an extension migration guide that Fred just linked in the chat that might be helpful for you, especially because there was a script that we wrote to help people migrate their extensions from old style to new style. That might be beneficial to look at as well. But I don't know, is there anyone on the call who maybe has some time to look at this with Rick? Or if not, to is there a place, is there like a GitHub repo or something where people can respond to an issue about this, Rick?
If I may just put it into the extension repo, but following your advice earlier in the call, I've downloaded the new cookie cutter, and what I think I might just do is migrate the sources over to that and the package.json file and see if I can get it to work. That's
cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, if I were in your situation, I think that's what I would do. But if it turns out that you get stuck there, then come on back. The other thing I would suggest is, and I know it's not actually meant for JupyterLab, but I'm sort of co-opting anyway, at this time on Thursdays on the same channel, there's a Jupyter contributing hour that typically we do Jupyter server stuff, but honestly, if somebody showed up with a question, nobody would say no. So that's a place where we actually look at, here's a bug someone's having, and we try to solve it in real time together. So that's another avenue I would consider.
Thank you. Well, I'll try and I'm stacked up with meetings today, but I'll try and solve it on my own today. If I can't get it done, I'll probably start coming to that meeting anyway, because we have other Jupyter server issues that we'd like to discuss, and I'd actually like some of the folks on my team to come to one of the folks on my team would not only would I like him to come to it, he'd love to come to it.
Cool.
By the way, I noticed there's an accessibility meeting just 15 minutes after this. This is completely off topic, but I was talking to Shauna Dark, who's the head of undergraduate CIO for undergraduate instruction at UC Berkeley. They've taken over maintaining the Berkeley Data Hub. And one of the things she told me was that she didn't want to be responsible for doing accessibility there. And she didn't. So I suggested to her that she talk to her team, and somebody should. I mean, I can reach out to, is there a person that I could point Shauna at who knows how to do this stuff? The accessibility stuff.
No is a strong term, but I would suggest actually attending one of our accessibility calls and pitching it there. But if not, I'm in that group. I'm happy to answer questions. Gabriel on this call, he's in that group. I don't know who else on this call right now is. Oh, Martha is. There's a few of us who, and so is Ely. Like a group of us on this call are usually on that call too. So, but yeah, the best place to get a sort of live rapid feedback is to actually just come to the call. But if not, you could, if you have a specific issue you want to talk about, open an issue and tag the group of people that I just mentioned, or you could drop something in the accessibility team compass, because we do have a repo for communication. And yeah, I don't know.
This is an issue I'm passing on for a friend, though I guess we should be concerned about it too. So I will give her those pointers, and thank you.
Okay, and here, and let me link the repo. Oh, thank you, Gabriel did. All right, folks, I'm going to stop the recording, even though we're over, so brace yourselves.
Okay, Tony, AT, thank you so much.
No problem.
And thank everybody on the call. I really appreciate it.